Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the JJ Talks NFL podcast. My name is Jonah Carden, and I am here to do a draft recap for the 2022 NFL draft, specifically with the Falcons draft class. If you were live with me during the draft, I did a live stream of the first and second day. So if you were there, thank you very much for tuning in. If you weren't, I'm going to give some thoughts here, and I'm going to attempt to post later on the YouTube channel some of my reactions. And speaking of, going forward, please note that I am transitioning to going to YouTube. So if you can, please go and subscribe. You should see, unless it's covered up, but the JJ Talks YouTube page or YouTube channel. Please go and subscribe to it. And yeah, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the draft. So in round one, they took wide receiver Drake London from USC at number 8 overall. I'll be honest, initially when this happened, I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of it. I was not very big on the Falcons taking a wide receiver at 8, especially considering the fact that they took tight end Kyle Pitts as high as they did last year at number 4. I wasn't super big on taking back-to-back big receiving weapons at the with your first round pick. But as I explained going forward, I started to feel a little bit better about that. But I'll talk about London a little bit. Last year, he missed the final 4 games of the 2021 season due to an ankle injury, but still put up pretty fantastic stats in 8 games. He had 88 catches for 1,084 yards and 7 touchdowns. He was an All-American, All-Conference honors, and the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year. He was fantastic. And to those that remember early on in the draft process, when I was going over around Christmas time, my top guys, Drake London was kind of like my 3rd or 4th guy, and he was my draft love. Over time, a lot of people started to love Drake London, and obviously he ended up being the first receiver off the board. And I'll say this, even though I had some guys rated higher than him, I was also vocal in saying that if the Falcons were going to take a wide receiver at 8, Drake London was the perfect fit. Bigger guy, not afraid of contact. If anything, he goes for contact. It's one of the reasons why I felt like Calvin Ridley was not really the type of receiver that Arthur Smith likes to use, because Arthur Smith likes the bigger, stronger ones that aren't afraid to shy from contact, able to get those extra yards, the tough kind of basketball-minded football players, and Drake London is that type of guy. Now, what do I think about this going forward? Well, I do think that this helps out the wide receiver room a lot, because the wide receiver room already was a lot of unproven, and basically anyone that was significant last year at the wide receiver room is not here anymore, specifically Russell Gage, and Calvin Ridley obviously will not be playing due to a suspension. So it needed an infusion of talent. While originally I was more keen on maybe them addressing them in the second round, even if they took multiple receivers, I do think that Drake London has a chance to be a very, very good receiver, and he kind of joked about being the Twin Towers along with Kyle Pitts, and I do think 2 big receivers like that is going to help whoever is playing quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. And so overall, I'm okay with this pick, especially considering, as most people saw, there ended up being a run on receivers after Drake London was picked. So it makes me feel a little bit better about it. I do like Drake London, the player. Again, really strong. He's tough. He can go up and get it. Some questions about his game is his long speed and his ability to create big-time separation. He's not exactly the fastest. He said he can run a 4.5, and if he can run a 4.5, I think that's fine. People talk about some questions on him being able to separate and how is that going to translate. If he can't really separate in college, how is he going to be able to do that in the NFL? I'm not too worried about that because of the way the game is, his game is played. But the big thing with him is he's a jump ball type of guy. Throw up and get it. And I think with the quarterbacks that we now have on the roster, I think that's going to help them a lot. So overall, I do like the pick. Then moving on to round 2, the Falcons actually traded up in the draft. Last year, they traded back in the draft. This year they traded up with their first second-round pick, and they went from 43 to 38 while giving up a fourth-round pick to the Giants and selected Penn State outside linebacker Arnold Ebiketie. And he was probably my top edge rusher available in the class at this point, and I'm really happy that they decided to address it. I remember in the live stream, I was actually thinking, wow, this feels like this could be where quarterback goes. But they decided to go edge. They decided to go pass rusher, and I really, really like it. Last year, Ebiketie, who a lot of people call AK, 6'2", 250 pounds. He had 18 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, a pass defense, second-team All-American, first-team All-Big Ten. Very, very productive year. And while he was at Temple, he was pretty good, but not to this level. Every single year he's gotten better. In Penn State, he had a fantastic season. And I think he's definitely the type of guy that is going to help a lot. Very, very productive. He's got a decent amount of pass rush moves already. I don't think the learning curve is going to be too crazy for him. He's got a good he's got a good amount of explosiveness. He's pretty good in terms of strength. He's also got some speed. So he's a very well-rounded pass rusher. And he's a guy that I think is going to be able to contribute right away. And I think he's going to get the opportunities to be able to contribute right away. He likes being known as the doctor of pass rush. If you go on his Twitter page, he actually is a Dr. Arnold Ebiketie, which I think is kind of funny. But I definitely think this is going to help our pass rush a lot. And I like the fact that they prioritized that and was willing to go up. I did think that fourth round seemed a little rich, but it is the beginning of the first or the second round, so I do understand the need to be able to maybe give up a little bit more than you might want. But I'm okay with that because they went up and got their guy, a very good productive player, and I think a guy is going to be very productive going forward for the Atlanta Falcons. So I was very happy with that pick. With their second pick in the second round, they took inside linebacker Troy Anderson from Montana State. This is the one pick that I felt the most cautious over because of the fact that I felt like they got him earlier than I would have projected him to go, and the fact that Nakobe Dean, who ended up sliding due to injury, was still on the board. I would have preferred Nakobe Dean in this spot, even an injured Nakobe Dean. But I do understand the thought process. Troy Anderson, 6'3", 243 pounds. In his career, racked up 214 tackles, 27.5 for loss, 10.5 sacks, 15 pass defense, 3 interceptions in 50 games, 40 starts. He also, not only did he play linebacker, he also played some running back, he played some quarterback, ended up having 33 rushing touchdowns, 1,100-yard rushing games, and over 2,000 yards in program history. So, extremely productive on both sides of the ball. This past season, he had 147 total tackles, 14 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 9 pass defense, 2 interceptions in 15 games, all in which he started in. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in the FCS ADA and a unanimous first-team All-American. So, another reason why a lot of teams were pretty high on him was because he tested out to be the most athletic linebacker in Combine history. He graded out at a complete 10 out of 10. I believe he ran like a 4.36 40 or 4.41 40, something like that. But he was like one of the fastest ever, most athletic ever. So people see him and his potential through the roof. He's strong, he's fast, he's athletic, and he just recently transitioned to linebacker, and people think that he's going to be able to develop fairly quickly. He's got to learn linebacker a bit more, but in terms of upside, it is huge, and it might be the highest upside of almost anybody in this draft. So, again, I understand the desire for it. This is one of those picks that's complete boom or bust. I could absolutely see a scenario where Troy Anderson completely busts, he never gets it, because he's not only jumping from Division II all the way up to the NFL level, which is already going to be hard for a lot of prospects, but he's also doing it in a position that he's not played very long. He's basically played linebacker for like 1.5 to 2 years. So he could very well bust. On the other side, if you told me 5-6 years from now he became the best linebacker out of this class, I wouldn't be surprised because that's how high his upside is. If he can get the nuances of linebacker, if he can work on his decision-making and processing, then between his sideline-to-sideline speed, his range, the way he's built, and his strength, he is going to be a fantastic linebacker for this defense. And I do think going forward, this is the type of linebacker that Atlanta is going to want, the bigger ones that still have good speed and good smarts, still good agility. I think he's got all the intangibles. It's just a matter of, is he going to be able to continue to learn the linebacker position? He had a good Senior Bowl, so that's why I'm saying some people think that he's going to be able to develop fairly well. If that's the case, this could end up being a very, very good pick. Then comes round 3, where I think for a lot of Falcons fans, not only might have been the steal of this draft class, but might be the one that gets them the most excited, and that is with the 74th overall pick, they took quarterback Desmond Ritter from Cincinnati. Cincinnati's quarterback, Desmond Ritter, was a guy that was connected to the Falcons for a while. And as the draft got closer, he became my QB3. Early on in the process, I wasn't super high on him. After the Senior Bowl, after the Combine, he moved up. And when we got to this position at 74, Malik Willis was still on the board. And a lot of people think that they should have gone with Malik Willis over Desmond Ritter. I'll say this. I think Desmond Ritter is the perfect fit for Arthur Smith's offense. He says he looks at himself a lot like Marcus Mariota, who happens to currently be in the quarterback room, who happens to have worked with Arthur Smith already. I see a lot of Ryan Tannehill as well, and we saw what we saw what Ryan Tannehill was able to do with Arthur Smith in Arthur Smith's offense, so I think that's really good as well. Not only that, but some people think that Desmond Ritter could top out to be the good version of Alex Smith, and look, Alex Smith, while he was never like a super high-end superstar quarterback, and I don't think Desmond Ritter is going to really be able to become that, he was a super solid starter that he wasn't going to lose you games, and he had the capability of winning them. And I think with Desmond Ritter, with his decision-making, with his desire to win, his athleticism, his arm, I think he's going to have that capability. Over the course of his career, he had over 10,000 yards, 87 touchdowns, 28 interceptions, along with 2,180 yards rushing and 28 touchdowns on the ground. With 4 seasons, he ended up being one of the best quarterback basically in Cincinnati history. Obviously, last year led them to the playoffs, ended up facing Alabama, where you could say what you want about him in that game, but that entire team was overmatched against Alabama talent-wise. I think that was fairly obvious. But he had a fantastic senior season, had a 13-1 record for the entire season. First team All-ACC, or AAC, and conference's Offensive Player of the Year 2 years in a row. And again, a lot of people see this as a steal. And here's how I see it. The more that I've thought about it, the more I'm excited, because I think this is a win-win for everyone involved. When you're looking at Desmond Ritter, he's going to be coming in with a chip on his shoulder. Not only has he had that, and he'll explain this to you, he's had a chip on his shoulder for basically his entire career, but he expected himself to go earlier. And now he's going in the third in a position where he doesn't have to start right away. He gets to work with the quarterback that he kind of sees himself after in a system that I think is going to be tailor-made ready for him. It's going to work very well with him. So I think with all that in mind, Desmond Ritter is in a fantastic spot for him. Doesn't have to start right away. Gets to be able to learn the offense, learn how to be a pro, and has a chance to be able to compete for a starting job. And if you're the Atlanta Falcons and Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, you're looking at it as like, okay, we got this guy in the third round when all these quarterbacks are dropping, and he could be our franchise guy. And if he is, fantastic. We got fantastic value. But even if he doesn't, everyone projects the Falcons to be bad next year. And there's supposed to be a lot of quarterbacks that a lot of people have first round grades on going into next season. If that draft class ends up being as good as people think, then you just take one then. You're not married to Desmond Ritter and married to the idea of him becoming the guy, your franchise quarterback, because of the fact that you were able to take him in the third round. If he just ends up being a career backup, he ends up being a pretty decent backup spot starter for you, in a third round pick in the quarterback situation, that is just fine. So I think this is a win-win for both sides. And I truly, truly believe that Desmond Ritter has the makeup to be able to be the franchise guy. He's dual threat, high-level pro capabilities. He has the tools to be able to do that. The big question that a lot of people have is his accuracy. And I think for basically all the quarterbacks in this class, accuracy was an issue. I think for the most part his mechanics are fine, but he does have a bit of an accuracy issue. But I do think it's something he can fix with coaching and with Arthur Smith and that coaching staff working with him, I think that's something that can be fixed. I think with his athleticism, with his desire to win, his leadership capabilities, he has the chance to be the franchise quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. And if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan, I think that has to excite you because it excites me. He not won't just beat you with his arm, he can beat you with his legs. And I think he's a perfect fit for the Atlanta Falcons in this offense. So I'm super, super happy with this pick. This could go down, if things work out and he ends up being the franchise guy, an absolute steal of a pick. And I think it works out great. So I love the pick. And going forward, I love how the board was able to fall for the Falcons. They didn't take a quarterback too early. They let the board fall to them, and they got him at a fantastic spot. Love this pick. With our second pick in the third round, they took outside linebacker Angelo Malone from Western Kentucky. Over the course of his career, he had about 350 tackles, 34 sacks, 60 tackles for loss, 9 forced fumbles, 8 pass defense. Last season, he had 9 sacks with 17.5 tackles for loss, 4 forced fumbles with 14 starts. He is a pure pass rusher, 6'3", 243 pounds, a bit on the smaller side, not as big as others. First team All-Conference USA, though. Two-time Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year in 2019 and 2021. He's a guy that he's going to be basically a pass rushing specialist early on in his career. In his interview with some of the Atlanta Falcons personnel, he was talking about how he wants to be able to get to about 250 pounds, which I think is going to help him a lot. But while I see Ebiketie as more of the all-around pass rusher, D'Angelo is more of the speed guy. And it works for him. And I think him and Ebiketie together is going to work out very, very well, along with the other pass rushers that the Falcons have brought in this offseason and they were able to get last season. I do like the pick. He's a guy, he's going to be able to get after he's going to be able to get after. As long as he can add a bit more weight and a bit add more power to where he can be more of a well-rounded pass rusher, it's going to work very well. High energy, he's long, he's bendy, he's got a fairly polished game, very productive. He just relies on his speed a lot, and I think if he can get a bit better and work on a bit more moves like that, he's going to be just fine. I don't think he's going to be very good in the run game. That's not really his play. It's definitely just strictly pass rush, so that's why I think he's going to be more so strictly on passing downs. But for the most part, really do like the pick. I like the idea that the Atlanta Falcons decided to focus in on pass rush. They were like, okay, we need pass rushers. We need to help out the defensive end spot, and we're going to do it. They synced 2 day 2 picks into that, and because of that, I think day 2 is a very, very big success for the Atlanta Falcons. They had 4 picks. I was kind of surprised that they used all of them. I thought maybe they'd be a bit more movement. Of course, they were able to move up, didn't take another day 3 pick, thankfully, but they used all 4 of them and got 2 pass rushers, a potential future quarterback, and one of the highest upside linebackers in the draft. Very, very successful day, in my opinion, for the Atlanta Falcons day 2. Moving on to day 3, the final day of the NFL draft, because they traded away their 4th round pick to go and get AK, they had to wait until the 5th round, where I think they might have gotten another steal in running back Tyler Algiere from BYU, 5'10", 224 pounds, super productive running back. And his story is also quite fascinating. So he started out at running back at BYU, and because of injuries to the linebacking core, he had to switch to linebacker. And so played linebacker for a year, and then injuries happened again to the running backs, and so he had to switch back to running back, and ended up having a superbly effective year last year. He ended up with 1,601 rushing yards, single season school record, 23 rushing touchdowns with a 5.8 yards per carry, and he recorded 70% of his rushing yardage after contact, which is super impressive. He was one of the best in terms of being able to breaking out of tackles. He didn't get down with first contact more often than not, and I think he's honestly a fairly complete back. I know there's a lot of questions about his receiving game, but in BYU, they didn't really ask them to do that. I don't think he's going to be a great route runner in terms of being a running back, but in terms of catching out of the ball at the backfield, I think that's actually going to be a decent part of his game. I think he can do that. It may be more of a drop-off type of thing, but also in this offense with Arthur Smith, that's not really a thing that was asked. If you go back to the time with Tennessee, you never saw that a bunch with Derrick Henry. So I think Tyler Algiere will be worked into that mold. I think he's got the capabilities of being a 3-down back. I definitely think early on in his career, though, he's going to be more of a goal line back, a first and second down back with maybe Damian Williams subbing in on third round. And, of course, you got Cordell Patterson, who I think is going to be moved around all over the place, whether it's wide receiver or running back. But I really, really like this pick. I think he is the perfect fit for the Arthur Smith offense. And I think he's got the potential to be a running back that leads the running back room one day. I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but I definitely think, especially after Mike Davis got cut recently to be able to save some money, I definitely think there's a good chance that Algiere is going to be able to get some carries this season and make a name for himself early on. He's got that physical running style that Arthur Smith really, really wants in his running backs, and I think this is a really, really nice pick and really nice value for Tyler Algiere here in the 5th round. Do like the pick here. All right, then we go to round 6, and what became the first of 2 Georgia Bulldogs picked, which is the first time that Atlanta had taken a Georgia Bulldog since Akeem Dent back in 2011. They took offensive lineman Justin Schaefer with the 190th pick in the 6th round. 6'4", 314 pounds. He played all 15 games at left guard for Georgia this past season, in which he became second team All-SEC and, of course, helped lead that team to the national championship. Georgia, especially their offense, was pretty good at running the football. That was mainly what was they're predicated on doing. He's a Georgia native, went to Cedar Grove High School, which is actually the same spot with Angelo Malone, who apparently is also his cousin, which is interesting. I don't even know if they really realized that going into it. To me, when I look at Schaefer and thoughts with him, he's big, he is a mauler with good length. He's focused on the running game. He's got a really good demeanor, big-time power, and he will bulldoze people, and he will push people and move them. He's got really good in terms of that. His pass blocking is not as good as his run blocking is, and some people think it's kind of poor. I don't think it's that terrible realistically, or realistically speaking at least, mainly because, of course, that Georgia offense wasn't necessarily predicated on the pass. It was predicated on the run, and I think if the Atlanta Falcons really want to turn into a run-first heavy team, then I think this is the type of guys you want to have in front. Now, some people question the fits, but to me, I'm not really worried about that. I think he's going to be competition at left guard for Jalen Mayfield. Of course, Jalen Mayfield had a pretty rough season last year. You hope that he could take a step forward, and I wouldn't be surprised with some added money from a Grady Jarrett extension that happened, which, by the way, I'm super happy for. I'm not going to make a video on it, but they did extend him for 3 years, saves him about $10 million this year. Is going to help him sign their draft class and maybe even make a move for maybe a guard to help improve the left guard spot, which is definitely and easily the weakest spot on the offensive line right now. But even if they don't, I think Schaefer can come in and provide competition for Mayfield and legitimately has a chance to come in and beat out Mayfield if Mayfield really can't take a step forward. So, at the very minimum, I think this is just a decent depth move along the offensive line, and I like it. I think it's a fine pick. I have no big issues with it. Then with their final pick in the 2022 NFL Draft at 213th overall, in round 6, they took another Georgia player, tight end John Fitzpatrick. 6'7", 250-pound tight end, super big, played in 38 games with 13 starts over 4 years, and he is not a big catch guy. He doesn't really catch the football. I think in the entire career, he had 17 catches for 200 yards and 1 touchdown. He's a blocking tight end. That is his role. And for those that remember, Lee Smith was our blocking tight end last year. And to be honest, this is just, I think, the Falcons filling that role that Lee Smith is leaving behind with his retirement. He's just going to come in and he's able to run block. And he's a pretty good run blocker at that. He understands his role. He's in line. He's got the intangibles to be able to do it. I don't think there's going to be much in terms of receiving game. And quite frankly, with the tight end room above them, headlined by Kyle Pitts, I don't think there's much worry with that. I think you could see, maybe sometimes he's going to leak out and be open forever. You could see him maybe be using the red zone a little bit. But his main job is going to be blocking. And that's what he's good at. And I'm fine with it. With the last pick in the 6th round, especially this late, either take a guy with superbly high upside or take a guy that he has one role and you could just fill it. And I think right now, Gladstone, I'm completely fine with them taking a blocking tight end. They needed one, or a tight end that was a good blocker. With Lee Smith's retirement, they take him here. Not much more outside of that. So that is the Atlanta Falcons 2022 NFL draft class. And I'm not super big on like draft grades. I know that's a super big thing with those around the NFL. They liked giving a draft grade to for teams. If I had to give a grade, I would say that this is probably around a B+ or an A-. I think the Falcons did a really good job of not really reaching. They kind of let the board fall to them for the most part, and they were able to fill needs. They needed to infuse talent in the wide receiver room. They did that with Drake London. They needed to get some help with the pass rush. They did that with AK, who, by the way, is going to be wearing number 47 apparently, AK-47. Like, that's okay. He had to have done that on purpose. But between AK and Malone, they helped with that. They needed to add linebacker because it seems that maybe Deion Jones will not be here much longer. They did that with Anderson. I felt like they needed to get another running back in that room. Some people talk about it being crowded. I thought they needed to get younger, long-term talent. They did that with Algiere. They needed to help get some depth across the entire team, just add more valuable depth. They were able to do that with tight end and at offensive line, and they were able to get out of this with another quarterback, potentially their franchise guy in Desmond Ritter. So I think the Falcons filled a lot of different needs here. I thought they had a really, really good draft overall. I'm very pleased with it. I'll be honest, I'm a lot happier about this draft than I was last year. But I want you guys to let me know, especially the Falcons fans out there, how do you feel about this draft? What was your favorite pick of the draft? Let me know in the comments below. As you can see below me, that is my Twitter, the JC3Talks, which is going to be right there. That is the one that I use the most. It's my personal one, so I'll be retweeting this. Let me know through that. My DMs are open. Whatever the case may be, that is my thoughts on the 2022 Falcons draft. Of course, we're not going to really be able to know how these picks all did until at least 3 years from now. But overall, I'm happy now, and I'm looking forward to being able to see these guys come out for rookie minicamp and seeing what they've got. So thank you again. Let me know what you guys' thoughts were on the draft as a whole and what you thought of the Falcons draft. But with that being said, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of JJ Talks, and I will see y'all next time.